Hi folks, this is Bean Crafts. This is my very first crafting video on YouTube, so I'm pretty nervous, but we're gonna give it a shot. So, before we start doing an actual craft, I'm just gonna say a little bit about this whole thing, and we're gonna take it from there. So, I basically wanted to do crafting videos on YouTube for like 2 years probably at this point, but I was always really worried that it wasn't going to come out perfect, that the video was going to suck, or the craft was going to suck, or nobody would like me. But I was so worried about everything being perfect that I made nothing at all. I wouldn't craft as much. I didn't make any videos, obviously, because it was the first one, but I decided to say enough of that stuff, and I'm not going to make good craft videos. I'm just going to make them. And it's going to be what it is. I'm going to try my very best, but I can guarantee that it's going to be not perfect. But I'd rather make something crappy and not perfect than not make anything at all. So the whole thing is going to be about creativity and inspiring other crafters to make stuff and to share tips and tricks so everybody can get better and enjoy making some happy crafts and stuff. So that's what we're going to do. I think it was Jake from Adventure Time that said the first step to being kind of good at something is being terrible at it at first, something like that. So that's kind of the motto that we're going to go with here, is that, you know, support and just making something rather than worrying about everything being perfect. So the project for today I wanted to do is the Gore Magala from Monster Hunter. He's one of my favorite monsters because he is super creepy. All of the other monsters look kind of like monsters, like kind of reptilian or like a beast or something, and I always saw the Gore Magala as alien, like alien. He looks like H.R. Geiger kind of art rather than any monster that is usual of that game, so I think he's really cool. He doesn't even have eyes, so thought what we could do today is make him adorable and make a little polymer clay version. So let's get started. I'm going to get the materials out here in just a sec. Okay, so for materials today, we have a reference photo, first of all. I've got some graph paper also that I'm working on. Just I feel like it might be easier to get sizes kind of going better if I have a graph to work with. And then we have our clay, so we've got white, gray, purple, black, red, and some blue. When you look at the Gore Magala, he seems to be just kind of a flat black, but I don't really want to just make a little black dragon because I think that might be a little bit boring, so I think adding some color would be really good. So I've already conditioned this clay. It's nice and soft. Word of caution, if you haven't worked with it before, the red clay, somehow the color gets all over your hand, so if you're working from red to white, you'll make it all pink. It's not a huge problem because we're doing fairly dark colors, but just something to be aware of. And tools, I've got an exacto knife, wire cutters, and also some, I think, 22 gauge wire. This is useful for attaching things that you think are probably going to fall off. If you think they're probably going to fall off in the oven, they're probably going to fall off in the oven. So he's got some wings, so I'm going to use the wire to attach them just to make sure that they kind of stay where they're supposed to. I also did a rough sketch earlier today of kind of what I wanted it to look like. You don't have to do that. Sometimes the clay just kind of does whatever it wants, and that's okay too. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of start with his body. Some of this will be in time lapse if I'm doing a whole bunch of kind of repetitive stuff, but I'll try to not time lapse it as much as possible. So first things first, I'm just going to kind of get an idea of kind of how big I want him to be, and I don't want him to be like super giant, but since I'm kind of new to polymer clay, I find that making things too small is quite difficult also, because putting details on it just ends up being kind of messy and it's a little bit difficult. So we're just gonna shape. That's squat little body for him. And the idea I had in my head was that he's just going to be kind of lying on the ground, just kind of relaxing a little bit, because in the game you kind of beat them up, the monsters, Monster Hunter. So it's nice to kind of think about them as they would be when they're not being hunted by you, kind of. I've been a fan of the Monster Hunter series for a couple years now. My boyfriend introduced it to me, and I love it. It was hard to learn at first, just because the controls were a little bit complicated. You get your butt kicked by all these terrifying monsters. But then once you kind of figure it out, like it's a blast. I like to play with a group of people, and I like to kill a monster and build something out of its body parts, which is pretty messed up. So I'm kind of happy with this shape. Just kind of a little eggy, kind of random shape. So I think that's cute. And now I'm gonna do a somewhat similar idea shape for his head. He's got kind of I almost want to say like bald looking kind of head. Like it's kind of smooth with like some spikes. Like usually there's a lot of scales going on, or horns, or spikes, or whatever. And he's got some kind of spiky ridges, but it's mostly kind of like a smooth shape. So I'm gonna try kind of make a little muzzle kind of area on this piece. Just kind of a little like pointy nose, and it's just gonna kind of slope back into kind of a skull. Well, not a skull, like a head shape. I kind of like that little shape. Oh, another good thing to attach with wire is probably the head to the body, because I don't want him to lose his little head. Okay, so I kind of like that. I don't really like how it's like a little egg sitting on top of another egg, so I'm going to kind of fuse them into one kind of entity here. Another little piece of clay. Just going to kind of smooth them together, because he's got a pretty thick neck that just kind of joins up into his body. So let's just kind of do that. I like working with polymer clay a lot because it's pretty forgiving. Like you can, if you make a bad shape or something, you can rework it pretty easily. It doesn't dry out as long as you keep it kind of sealed up. So if you've never worked with it, I encourage you to give it a shot because it's pretty fun. And I'm just going to work it and try to get a shape that I like here for him. And make him a little bit more squat. There. Like I said, like, don't stress out too much about trying to get something that you saw in your head exactly out, because sometimes when you're working, like especially with clay, you'll discover a shape and you think that's cute or that's really cool, and you just kind of want to stick with it. So, you know, don't force it to become exactly what was in your head. Just let it kind of turn into something cool. Like you can always make another one, but sometimes it's nice just to see where something ends up, and especially clay, because you can get these really nice, like I like making nice little kind of roundy shapes, and it can be quite clean looking. Like maybe not right now at this moment for this project at the moment, but we're working on it. So I kind of like that shape form. And make sure, you know, you're happy with base shapes before you move on to anything else, because once you start attaching pieces and stuff like that, it's a bit harder to kind of undo all that work. So just spend a little bit of care getting it kind of where you want it. Okay. And I'm just kind of like rubbing my finger along it just to kind of get some of the fingerprints and kind of lumps out. And then I'm going to try to make his face a little bit more symmetrical with the rest of his body. There we go. So I guess in my drawing he was going to be kind of awake, now he's going to be kind of sleepy. That's okay. And I'm going to make him a little tail. It's going to be a kind of a cutesy little squat tail. So it's at this stage I always question my life, and I think this is garbage. It so doesn't look like anything at all yet, but if you keep working at it and you spend some time, you usually end up with something kind of fun, kind of cool. Let's see. If I wanted to have a fat tail. I hope that y'all can see what I'm doing and it's not just my little dirty hands floating in and out of the camera. So when I look at his tail, it's not super round all the way around, so I'm just gonna decide here if I want it to be kind of the way it looks in the game or if I want it to round out for my piece that I'm doing here. I think I might make it a little bit more round. Yeah, and it'll kind of become a little bit more angular when we add on his spikes. Push it in. There. I'm gonna curl it up a little bit. That's cute. He's one of my favorite monsters to fight. He's a bit scary. He reminds me a little bit of Devil Joe, just because he can get kind of savage when he is raged. And his breath attack is really cool. It's like a purple, explodey, fizzly, weird stuff. That's super scientific, I know, but it's really neat, so I like it. I like fighting him. And we'll add on some little tiny arms and legs too. I kind of want to do the sort of anime style little penguin arms onto them. I don't know what like this little thing I'm making is gonna do after. Might be just a little useless whatever, but I just like to have them kind of on display or give them as gifts to my nerdy friends. Okay, so I'm happy actually with this shape now that I added a tail. So let's give him some arms. In my drawing I kind of had his front hands under his chin, but I kind of have an idea now just to have him kind of spread eagled out. That sounds kind of funny. Let's see what that. Yeah, I think we're gonna have him just totally mellowed out here. And you can smooth this ridge out. I'm deciding whether I want to. If I don't smooth it out, I kind of see it as like little fat rolls are kind of making a wrinkle, which is pretty cute. I like that, but I don't know, maybe it would look better smoothed out. We'll kind of just go with the flow here. Ideally, and what I usually do, and what I of course didn't do this time, if I'm making two things of the same size, I'll take up one piece of clay and I'll just cut it in half, just to make sure that they're kind of the same size. But you can always just kind of fudge it and struggle with it, like what I'm probably going to do here. And I'm going to add little claws onto his hand. Let's see that. Looks kind of like a seal. Not, you know, I think I'm going to smooth these onto his body. You can get tools to work with polymer clay that have silicone tips on them that make your smoothing out probably a lot easier than using your big fingers. That's not working for me so good right now, but I do have some tools. I usually just kind of muddle through it with my clod hoppers, but that's okay. And I don't know how much I'm gonna speed through this, if I can do time lapse. I don't know if people like that. I kind of like that if the person's doing the same thing for a long time. So since it's the first video, we'll see. Then we'll give them some little back feet too. I think I might make these a little bit more rounded out. So let's do the way I said, the way that was smart. And so you take a piece and you just kind of cut it in half. And this way is a little bit tricky because you gotta kind of decide what your, like how much clay you're gonna need times 2 for each size, but I'm sure like with practice you get better at estimating stuff like that. Oh, that seems a little bit too big. So let's try it again. We'll just take some clay away. And then we'll just cut this one in half. Nope. Just don't be afraid to keep working at it till you're happy. There we go. I think that's a better size. Okay, so, whoopsie. I like this general shape. I'm just going to spend some time now to kind of make sure everything is symmetrical, and make sure he's going to kind of sit the way I like him, and just smooth out his surface a little bit, and then kind of plan where I'm going from here, because he's just kind of a little lump right now, but once we start adding details, I think he'll really start to get some personality. So I'm just gonna work on the shape, and then we'll take it